Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Joel Gould. I'm in my 36th year of dental practice in Manhattan Beach, California. I wish I could have been with you today, but I'm honored to virtually present to you. This work brings together two areas that have significantly shaped my thinking: hydrogen isotope biology and metabolic interventions. In my practice, we fabricate oral appliances as an alternative to CPAP therapy for sleep apnea treatment. I was diagnosed with it myself. And that diagnosis is a part of what drove me deeper into the underlying physiology. A CPAP is a very effective allopathic treatment. It keeps the airway open, but it doesn't address the root cause of sleep apnea. And through that work, I began thinking more about the root causes of disease. And around that time, I came across the work of Dr. Weston A. Price, another Canadian dentist. It focused on ancestral behaviors, diet, fat soluble vitamins, and what we would now describe as epigenetic influences. And over time, as a clinician, watching patients over decades, I became increasingly interested in modifiable factors that influence long-term health. And that led me to a central question: what does health ultimately come down to? And increasingly, the answer pointed towards cellular energy production and mitochondrial function. For me, that question is not theoretical, it's personal. Both of my parents passed away from pancreatic cancer. Later, after having a basal cell carcinoma removed myself, I became more focused on long-term prevention and on health span, staying healthy as we age. And given both my clinical experience and my personal experience, it became a central focus for me, and it led me to a very simple yet critical question. What can we actually change? What are the factors that influence health that are within our control? And it became increasingly clear that many aspects of modern living place persistent stress on mitochondrial efficiency and resilience. And that led me to explore metabolic approaches to health, and one powerful metabolic intervention, which I'm presenting today. The fasting mimicking diet was developed by Dr. Walter Longo and is a defined 5-day protocol, a commercially available fast in a box, designed to be practical and clinically achievable. What Dr. Longo did was take what would normally be a very difficult fast and make it accessible. And the clinical outcomes are significant: improvements in insulin sensitivity, activation of autophagy, and removal of damaged cellular components, including the clearance of dysfunctional mitochondria and activation of regenerative pathways. A process that modern humans can fit into their life by simply eating what's in the box, one box for each of the 5 days, and the biological impact is profound. So the FMD is not a single intervention. It's acting across multiple levels of biology at the same time. Metabolic, hormonal, and cellular systems are all shifting together. It's a coordinated response, not an isolated pathway. And when you step back, this begins to look less like a modern intervention and more like a biological state that our physiology is already designed to access. And in many ways, this reflects the conditions our biology evolved under as hunter-gatherers, with natural rhythms of feasting and fasting. And it suggests that these are not just optional states, but deeply embedded biological programs that shaped how we function as human organisms. And in the modern world, we are seeing the consequences of that pattern's absence in the form of chronic inflammatory dysfunction. What Dr. Longo did was create a way to access that state in a controlled and clinically achievable way. So what we're really seeing here is not just a dietary change, but a transition into a fasting metabolic state. The body shifts away from external fuel towards stored energy. Triglycerides are mobilized and beta oxidation becomes dominant. As a result, glucose levels decrease and insulin decreases, and fat utilization increases. So the system as a whole is now functioning differently. And in that environment, mitochondrial function becomes increasingly important. As the body shifts towards endogenous fuel, the source of hydrogen entering the system begins to change. Up to this point, we've been talking about metabolism, fuel utilization, and mitochondrial function. But there's another layer here that we typically don't consider, and that's the nature of hydrogen itself. Hydrogen is not uniform. There are different isotopes, protium and deuterium, and that difference is not trivial. Deuterium is a heavier isotope. it contains an additional neutron, which gives it different physical properties, and those differences begin to matter in systems that rely on proton movement, particularly within the mitochondria. And when I encountered the work of Dr. Gabor Semlier and Dr. Laszlo Boros, who are both here with us today, it didn't feel like a small variable. It felt like something that could be operating at the very fundamental of metabolism. And if that's true, it has the potential to influence how we think about health, aging, and disease. Under modern conditions, we're living in a very different environment than our biology evolved under as hunter-gatherers. There's chronic nutrient availability and very little interruption to that input. The system becomes glucose dominant, fat oxidation is suppressed, and much of that intake comes from ultra-processed foods, which introduce exogenous compounds and potentially higher loads of deuterium than the system was designed to manage continuously. At the same time, mitochondria are not being challenged. There is a reduced turnover and less selective pressure. Over time, that combination places increasing strain on mitochondrial function, leading to the kind of impaired efficiency that we now recognize as the foundation of chronic inflammatory dysfunction. Fasting changes that environment and induces energetic stress. And in that state, mitophagy is activated. Less efficient mitochondria are selectively removed, and what remains are mitochondria that are better able to function under these conditions, more efficient, more functional, with improved performance. So the system is not just being reduced, it's being refined. And what emerges is not just improved function, but renewed components and fresh mitochondrial machinery. So now we come back to the fasting mimicking diet, because everything we've just discussed, mitochondrial stress and selection, is already happening within that framework. The FMD is powerful, it's clinically validated, and it reproduces many of the effects of fasting. But it's important to remember this is not a true fast. You're still eating. So the question becomes, what are you eating during that phase? Because now we're not just thinking about calories or macronutrients, we're thinking about the substrate composition. And from an isotopic perspective, different substrates carry different hydrogen compositions. So during the FMD, there's the potential to select for substrates that are lower in deuterium, and that may further support the conditions we've already created, mitochondrial stress, selection, and refinement. In other words, the mimicking part matters. And separately, for those who want to take this further, deuterium-depleted water as an adjunct to this protocol is a natural extension of this framework and worth considering. But this process doesn't end with fasting. There's a second phase that's just as important, the refeed. This is where the system shifts from selection to rebuilding. Regeneration begins, cellular proliferation increases, and repair mechanisms are activated. Anabolic processes resume. But how you refeed matters, because this is not simply a return to eating. This is a profound biological process. We've just moved through a period of selective clearance. What we introduce next determines the quality of what's built. And from an isotopic perspective, that becomes even more relevant, because this is not just rebuilding. It's rebuilding under a new set of conditions. 5 days in the modern world, that's an accomplishment. And the rewards are remarkable. The system has been fortified and regenerated, and now we have a choice regarding what we rebuild with. That choice is within our control. The pentose phosphate pathway is one way that we can examine how powerful the refeed is. During fasting, the PPP is greatly reduced, because during that phase, the system is not building, it's selecting, and there's very little demand for new cellular material. However, on the refeed, that changes, and the PPP activity increases. And one of the key roles of this pathway is to support rebuilding, providing the building blocks for new cells, nucleotides, lipid backbones, and reducing power through NADPH. So the refeed is an active biological event, and what you eat during it determines what gets built. And that rebuilding is dependent on the substrates that are available. And this brings us back to the question we started with: what are the factors that influence health that are within our control? Metabolic interventions that take into account how our biology evolved, and paying attention to the deuterium content of what we eat. These are behaviors that are within our control. So stepping back, the biology here is established. We understand the mechanism: stress, selection, rebuilding. And the fasting mimicking diet makes that process accessible, because the reality is a true 5-day fast isn't practical for most people, and it doesn't need to be. The FMD allows the body to enter the same biological state without requiring full caloric restriction. And that's the practical genius of it. But there's a second layer here that comes into focus when you look at this through an isotopic lens. The biology we're working with was shaped under conditions profoundly different from the modern environment. That biology hasn't changed. And what this process does, even over a short period, is allow the body to move through a pattern more consistent with the conditions it evolved under. Not by removing somebody from modern life, but by recreating the core biological signals. And in that sense, this is not just fasting mimicking. It's a practical approximation of hunter-gatherer metabolic conditions. In other words, it's hunter-gatherer mimicking, accessible, repeatable, and grounded in the biology we already have. 5 days, Monday to Friday. This is one of the most practical, powerful, and underutilized interventions available to modern humans today. And it's within reach of almost anyone. The science in this room is extraordinary, but most of the world has never heard of it. And part of that is the complexity. These are not simple ideas to communicate. It's a challenge this field shares with others that came before it. Weston A. Price documented the consequences of modern nutrition in the 1930s, yet here we are. The science is not the problem. Translation is the problem. Before written language, before the printing press, critical information was sung, it was danced, it was told in story. That's how it survived. That's how it was remembered. And that's how it changed behavior. The oldest teachings in human history were songs. I'm trying to do the same thing for the science of human biology, through animation, through music, through characters that carry real science, in the form that a 9-year-old and their parent will never forget. Because the modern hunter-gatherer does not need to move back into the wild. We just need to understand our biology. And understanding starts with feeling it. The science of the change we need to make is clear, but making it engaging, memorable, and even fun, that's what creates change that lasts. And before I close, I want to share something personal. When I first started exploring mitochondrial function, I kept coming back to one question. How does the body actually make ATP? Not the chemistry, but the mechanism. And when I finally looked at the cross-section of ATP synthase, I wasn't really prepared for what I saw. The smallest molecular motor on Earth, the universal engine that powers all life on this planet, plant and animal alike. And it looks like a 6-petal flower with a curved heart at its center. The heart spins, and as it rotates, it compresses the compartments, physically forcing the reactions together, adding the inorganic phosphate to ADP, creating ATP. Well, I was completely blown away. And that image became the logo for everything that I'm building. Because sometimes nature makes the point better than we ever could. Now I'm going to play a short film that I created to help bring science into popular culture. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello, Mother Nature. It's me, Deuterium.
Ah, Deuterium, it's been a long time. We need to talk.
That's usually a bad thing.
You know what I'm going to say. It's your job at Deuterium Records to share my simple information for health and wellness with the residents of planet Earth, especially the children. Unfortunately, you have failed.
I know, I'm sorry. But times have changed so quickly. Our little record company can't keep up with this new digital technology, the internet, and even TikTok. You don't know what it's like out there.
Calm down, Deuterium. You run this company because your brother Hydrogen is just too flighty and comes apart at the seams.
Yes, ma'am. I will collaborate with my team at Deuterium Records, and we will bring your message into the modern age. All right, everyone, listen up. I spoke with the owner of Deuterium Records. You know, Mother Nature. Boy, is she pissed.
Oh goodness, we're all in trouble now.
Oh dear me. Oh no, really? Mother Nature? This is serious.
She's right to be upset. The latest ratings are abysmal. We're just not connecting to our fans anymore. Team, we're in trouble. We need to shake things up, retool, bring in some fresh talent, and change with the times.
Whoa, slow down, boss. I'm a mitochondria. I'm the powerhouse of the cell. And I don't go out of style.
Marty, buddy, are you telling me you're killing it these days? Your electron flow, voltage, and overall power is way down.
Ah,
And it's not just you, Marty. Mother Nature is being trampled on by many who think they can outsmart her with technology. Modern humans' health and the health of this planet are deteriorating. And Mel, what the sugar are you wearing? A nightcap? Are you really surprised that today's tech-consumed kids are shutting you out of their life?
Oh, sorry, friends. I'm exhausted. I'm sleeping poorly. There's so little left of me, melatonin. It can't end well for humans.
everyone knows I'm foundational. Without me, there is no multicellularity. You would all just be a single cell bag of goo. You're welcome.
Marty, did you ever consider why you're not performing like you used to? What's in that cup? I would bet it's full of me, deuterium, and a few other villains.
Don't be so neurotic, Marty. We're all struggling here. Everyone's out to get me and cut me out of their lives. I'm what makes animals, well, animals. Without me, cholesterol, you can't have nerves or muscles.
I've been around for 13.7 billion years. How should I know what kids these days want? But this rebranding request is coming straight down from Mother Nature herself. She needs her message clarified and heard. Well then, it's agreed. We will retool, reimagine, and rebuild our little record label into a modern media company. With cartoons, movies, video games, NFTs, singing and dancing for adults and children. Our artists at Deuterium Records will put on live concerts in cyberspace, and we will create the ultimate music and entertainment paradigm so that your message of science is brought out into the metaverse.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm really excited to post this. I was able to present virtually in Budapest at the 5th Annual Congress for Deuterium Depletion. And it was a huge honor for me to present my cartoon characters. This is technically their global launch. This conference was about the isotope of hydrogen called deuterium. And it's kind of hard to remember. That's why I made cartoon characters about it. But this is really incredible just because everyone understands that sugar is bad for us. But why? Why is sugar bad for you? Well, one of the most important reasons is that sugar is completely full of deuterium, and that's a version of hydrogen that destroys the mitochondria. So deuterium is a natural version of hydrogen, and it's in almost everything, including water. But when you have too much of this version of hydrogen, then it actually destroys your metabolism. And keeping in mind that all starchy foods are loaded with deuterium. One of the other big things people are talking about are industrial seed oils and why they're so bad. There's lots of reasons why they're bad. They're very unstable, they're unnatural, but they're also high in deuterium. So hopefully, if you're interested in the science, you can take a look at this slideshow. It was a lot of fun putting it together, and I've got a lot more fun stuff coming out in the near future. Thanks.